Well, vive la France! Yeah. Finally. So the French have actually done something rather brave and interesting and patriotic for once. Allure. Surprising everyone around the world. Where a group of 20 or more retired generals, one of them being a former head of the Foreign Legion, you know those guys in the Bugs Bunny cartoons that are always in the desert and sweaty and thirsty? You know, one of them. Calling for a military coup in France if Emmanuel Macron does not take serious action to prevent the desecration and destruction of France at the hands of the far left and the violent Islamists. Now, the generals and the people that support them, like Marine Le Pen, are not happy with Macron's government and where it is leading. The multiple decisions he and his government have made that seem to value the whole of the world before the people of France. Encapsulated by the Yellow Vest protests that happened for over a year recently, where he treated them as insurgents and criminals, using the highest amount of force upon his own people that he possibly could without committing war crimes. I mean, just on the edge. Like the sort of stuff you see in the Congo. Always seeming to favour those who hate the country, rather than those who seek to defend proudly France and the people within it, that grew up in it, and the France they once knew. And the French have faced a number of recent attacks, multiple beheadings in churches and in the streets, with no-go areas and communities who isolate themselves to such an extent they don't even know the language, or care for the people around them who are just seen as infidels anyway. With multiple churches being burnt down, targeted by extremists, with even the most historic of them all, the miraculous Notre Dame, mysteriously catching fire by accident, of course, and then celebrated in public by all those who would see it burnt down. It's just a mystery, innit? A strange union between the far left and the Islamists, who would otherwise be at polar opposites of the political compass on all topics. Them both unifying to burn down Western civilization, but for different reasons. Hey, why not, right? The enemy of my enemy will someday cut my pretty little pink-haired head off. So these generals wrote an open letter saying that they want France to be strong against its enemies that they have. Comparing it to a failed coup by generals against President Charles de Gaulle 60 years before. With a growing portion of the public in France just growing tired of the lies, the obfuscation, the political correctness, and just the hiding by the mainstream media on these ever-increasing and violent topics. With hundreds of thousands of undocumented immigrants just strolling through the border every year. Where do they go? Nobody knows, huh? You with your mask and your passport, yeah, I'm watching you. But them, don't worry about it, son, don't worry, just let them through, yeah? That if left alone, will change France forever, or at least lead them down a really dark path for a long time. So even politicians from both sides of the aisle criticise the way that Macron and his party have handled the whole situation with the election coming up. Frexit and the self-preservation of history and culture of France on one side, and more immigration, more destruction of its history and culture, taking away free speech from free people to socially engineer them in the globalist mindset where France and the French don't matter on the other. Only Zool. Only Zool. And though the mainstream media seeks to portray this as simply the old Frenchman being Islamophobic, you know, that old chestnut, and how boring and obtuse, as Christopher Hitchens predicted years ago here.
This is very urgent business, ladies and gentlemen, I beseech you. Resist it while you still can, and before the right to complain is taken away from you, which will be the next thing. You will be told you can't complain because you're Islamophobic. The term is already being introduced into the culture as if it was an accusation of race hatred, for example, or bigotry, whereas it's only the objection to the preachings of a very extreme and absolutist religion. Watch out for these symptoms. They are just symptoms of surrender, very often ecumenically offered to you by men of God in other robes, Christian and Jewish and smarmy ecumenical. These are the ones who will hold open the gates for the barbarians. The barbarians never take a city till someone holds the gates open for them. And it's your own preachers who will do it for you, and your own multicultural authorities who will do it for you. Resist it while you...
Though Islam and Muslims aren't a race but a religion, so one can't be racist towards them, only bigoted. I mean, it's a syntax thing, but it annoys me. I mean, get your empty threats right before you scream them in my face. Also, you can discuss issues of race without it being racist. I mean, we need to grow up, people. Yeah? You can have difficult conversations without it being evil. Deal with it. The generals also address the far left, which has no skin colour. Well, except mostly liberal white women and those men that look weaker than lesbians. So that can't be racist, along with the yellow vests, which consisted of French protesters of all colours, but a large portion of them white because of demographics. So that racism charge crumbling beneath the feet of those who stand there screaming racism. Poetic, really. The general spoke of the leftist ideology on race and gender destroying France, and that they needed to stop this immediately, warning of it creating an impending civil war. So that civil war being talked about in America and France and Eastern Europe and Middle East and bloody everywhere now, right? It's not looking good, folks. Just look how far the communist termites are buried. And look how well they have dined. The general saying this social science study imported from the United States is creating hatred amongst our communities. With their hate-filled rhetoric and support for tearing down French statues and rewriting their history. Does that sound familiar? Huh? With debates on race, religion, gender, colonization and history bludgeoning the country and its people from malevolent, bad faith activists seeking power, money and control under the guise of telling you how to be polite and what society should be like and what you should think, do, vote and speak, all falling in line with the cult and religion of woke social justice. The generals say it's a rejection of patriotism by its leaders that only harms French unity, and I think we'd all agree. And all this is coming after once again being conquered by the British, this time over fishing rights in Jersey, a UK territory offshore of France. So don't mess with the British, all right? Or fuck you up.